Hello and welcome to this very special episode of US Election Watch. I am Gaurie Dwivedi reporting from getting you this show from Washington DC. In fact, I'm at a very historic place. It's called the World War I Memorial, and history has essentially been in the making in the US as well, with Donald Trump becoming the first president in over a century to come back after a gap of 4 years. Let's get you the headlines. Let's get the show rolling. First up, Donald Trump will begin picking his cabinet. Elon Musk, RFK Jr. are now jockeying for key posts in his administration. President Joe Biden is set to address the nation after Donald Trump's decisive victory in the elections. The address comes after Kamala Harris conceded defeat to Trump yesterday. And in fact, massive wildfires now in California that has forced thousands of people to flee. Wildfire has now in fact spread to over 14,000 acres and destroyed many houses. All right, our big story on the show. What does Donald Trump's return to White House mean for New Delhi? How does it impact our relationship in the backdrop of a steady elevation in terms of strategic alignment, security interests, and convergence on a whole host of priorities, whether related to China or whether related to other manufacturing aspects? But remember, Donald Trump comes with his own very focused interests of how he wants to take up relationships, especially in the backdrop of trade. New Delhi bracing for a 20% trade hike. But what else should New Delhi be prepared for, and what could the new relationship be like? Let's get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in with the very latest on this. Hello Mohammad, how are you?
Yes, good, Gaurie. How this Trump Sarkar, the new Trump Sarkar, is going to impact New Delhi?
Go ahead.
Audio nahi aa raha hai. Yeah, Gaurie, so how this new Trump Sarkar is going to impact New Delhi, as you rightly pointed out, just the last day, yesterday, Prime Minister spoke to him, and that has certainly set the tone that how India will look forward to the new Indo-US ties under Mr. Trump. First of all, when it comes to trade ties, Mr. Trump has also said that perhaps he will pick up from where he left last time in his last tenure. So when it comes to trade ties, it is expected that Mr. Trump will go on to impose higher tariffs on Chinese goods, and that's where India is looking a chance that if it can replace the Chinese goods, if Trump imposes higher tariffs on Chinese goods. But when it comes to defense sector, energy sector, space sector, these are three sectors in which India will look to foster or sort of cement more meaningful ties with United States. And besides that, what is going to be, besides this, this is going to be a smooth ride when it comes to tech, trade, energy, space sector, where India will look for more close cooperation with United States. Also, defense is one area where India will certainly look to enhance its collaboration with United States. But there is not, there are certain areas where India will also have to be a bit concerned, a bit guarded when it comes to United States, because we have seen these international religious freedom reports, state departments criticizing internal politics of India. Whether that will go down, whether that will be muted or not in this new regime is certainly going to be a big concern for India. Besides that, we also know that Trump's advisor, Mr. Shalab, was quoted in the media saying that perhaps Trump will also crack down on Khalistani elements. That will have to be seen whether any action is taken against those secessionist elements, those separatist elements who have created a havoc in Canada right now, but whether Mr. Trump will also take some charge and take some action against these elements. India will be certainly keeping an eye on those developments. Besides that, India will also look for that how Mr. Trump acts as a leader, because he is very outspoken. We know how active he is on social media, and at times he also shares something which has not happened in fact, which doesn't happen in meetings with the leaders. He goes on to say there have been many past instances when Mr. Trump has said something while other leaders part of that meeting have conflicting ideas or have given a conflicting statement to that. So he is very outspoken. That is something which India will be guarded about. But when it comes to policies, India will have to see that how Mr. Trump treats China and Pakistan both, because India is partner in Quad, and perhaps India will expect that Mr. Trump will work to strengthen this group in order to counter Chinese influence in the Southeast Asia region.
All right, Mohammad Ghazali giving us the very latest in terms of what to expect in the relationship under Trump 2.0 administration. Many thanks for joining us. In fact, let's now take a look at this report that tells our viewers really the difference in terms of what happened 4 years back when Trump contested unsuccessfully, lost to Joe Biden, and now when he contested and won very, very significantly in a landslide victory in the recently concluded elections. Take a look.
Make America great again. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
Outsider, disruption and change. In 2016, Donald Trump entered the political scene as an outsider, a brash billionaire who promised to drain the swamp of Washington. His campaign was driven by populist rhetoric, anti-establishment promises, and a vision of America that resonated with voters frustrated by political elites. His style was confrontational and unapologetic, and he branded the political system as corrupt and ineffective. Cut to 2024, Trump is a fighter reborn. The 2020 election aftermath, leading to the January 6th Capitol attack and ongoing legal battles, have changed the narrative around him. Trump has, in his own words, reclaimed the stolen election of 2020, positioning himself as the rightful leader of a movement. He's no longer just a businessman outsider. This time, it's about returning power to the people. But Trump faces a barrage of legal challenges, from his handling of classified documents to alleged election interference. These battles will define his second presidency. Interestingly, his impact on the judiciary has been profound. Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, cementing a 6-3 conservative majority in his first term. With his Supreme Court picks now in place, he could rely on a more favorable judiciary to push his agenda and, more importantly, shield him from litigation. Plus, a Republican Senate ensures his legislative goals can pass more smoothly, unlike the gridlock he faced in his first term, especially on conservative priorities like tackling illegal immigration, abortion bans, or limiting federal powers. A second Trump presidency would be a return to power, but also an escalation in the cultural, political, and legal battles that defined his first term. It will be a Trump who's not just fighting for change, but fighting to prove that he's the right man to fix what he sees as a broken country. An America more divided, more anxious, and more polarized than ever before. With Arjun Samar Mahendra, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, what really was the reason for Donald Trump's massive success? What got him going? What were the key demographics that really backed him is now a focus that we are now looking at right now in the show. And let me also get in my colleague Natasha is joining me from New York, who's also been crisscrossing through New York, Philadelphia and parts of the coast to really give us a flavor of what really worked for Donald Trump, whether it was the working class people who saw reason for the economic plan he came up with, was it the Hispanic voter base? Ironically, despite his very strong anti-immigrant stance, did the Hispanic vote also go to Donald Trump is a very important question that we need to really focus on and delve into. Natasha, talk to us about you've been speaking to a lot of people. What have they been telling you in the last couple of days, couple of weeks about what really worked for Donald Trump, especially these demographics that we were talking about?
Gaurie, before I jump into those nuances of the Hispanic population, I want to say I haven't been crisscrossing this country as much as you, and it's amazing to see you always anchoring from different locations. Now, coming to the Hispanic vote, one thing let's start by understanding that it's not a monolith, right? First of all, they are legal immigrants, then they are illegal immigrants. A lot of legal immigrants from South America who are here, again, from different countries with diverse perspectives, they are against illegal immigration. They want to see that stricter border. And the reason is often those illegal immigrants are threatening their jobs as they perceive it. So that's one factor. The other factor is, despite all of Donald Trump's and his campaign's very acerbic remarks around immigrants, the immigrants who are here legally, many of them voting for the first time, many young, what they are concerned about is their day-to-day survival. And in their day-to-day survival, especially in the last few years, as we keep talking about, that inflation has hit them. Their jobs have been hit. The working class jobs have been hit very badly, including in key counties in Pennsylvania, which Donald Trump took by a very clear majority. Then there were other angles, which is young men. Now, young men, both on the white Americans as well as Hispanic Americans, and a certain section of also black young men, have gone for Donald Trump. They see in him a certain machismo that they admire, and they just trusted him more to fix the problems that they're facing. So several different angles here, including a lot of Hispanic women who voted on Catholic perceptions. They were against abortion.
All right, Natasha, appreciate you joining me to give us a sense of what really worked for Donald Trump, because that will also give an indication of which way his administration's policies will be, because he does need to cater to the people who brought him into office. In fact, shifting focus now to a very important conversation I had earlier with Danny Gaekwad, a man who's in fact one of the biggest success stories in terms of Indian Americans here, and also someone who strongly backs Donald Trump, a key Republican voice in the Indian American community. Listen in.
I am now joined by one of the biggest supporters of Donald Trump, one of the most successful stories of Indian Americans, a man who has done very well in both hotel and real estate and a whole host of other businesses as well. Danny Gaekwad, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you very much for getting me on NDTV.
First question I want to ask you, sir, is you are one of the biggest supporters of Donald Trump. He has got a huge victory, a popular mandate also under him, and also, of course, the Electoral College victory. How did you, first of all, tell me you celebrated this victory? How did you do that?
So I feel like I was in a college election because this is the third time in my life I'm supporting same person, which is very unique for myself. Every time you get two chances to support presidential, you know. So I stayed up till 4 a.m. I wanted to make sure everything goes well, just crossing fingers, talking to friends. My wife was equally excited. She don't participate much in process, but she was so intrigued by the hard work of Trump that she and her old friends were at my house and they were like, wow, cheering. So we were up till 4 a.m. and then we fall asleep.
Of course. You know Mr. Trump very well. Explain to us, talk to us about how you think his administration this time around will be different from Trump's earlier administration in 2016.
So here's the thing. If you ever meet Trump in person, you will see, by God, two different Trump. One Trump is as casual as anybody you met in your life, really, one on one. And he cracks more jokes, and this is no lie, than any stand-up comedian. He has so many good things to say. He's so relaxed. He'll ask you, you want to stand, you want to sit, you want to talk. But most of the time, he will entertain you. And this is no lie to you. He will entertain you by different jokes and this, even though topic is serious. I had many occasions. I sat one on one with him, with the other very big dignitaries like governors and his staff, which is chief of the staff and like that. But he is totally different animal. Then another Trump you see on a television is completely different. So once you know him, you start gravitated to him because he's a very simple, common guy. He can take anybody's suggestion and put it in a motion. He's not very administrative type and a red tape. Talk to my secretary. He not. He controls. Tell me, what do you want? How do you want? What can I do? What's better for America?
All right, we'll get more of that conversation for you in just a bit. But let's also now focus on what will a Trump victory mean in terms of foreign policy. Remember, around the world, people have been waiting. Policy makers have been wanting to know what will be Trump's next moves, whether it comes to Russia, whether it comes to the Middle East, whether it comes to China. Remember, there are two wars that's going on right now. And in both the cases, Donald Trump went ad nauseum saying he's going to end those wars in 24 hours. So what does this mean for all these key conflicts and key geographies? Take a look at this report that Vishal, in fact, my colleague, filed a short while back.
So Donald Trump's return to the White House has potential to reshape the US's foreign policy. Trump has said in the past that he will end the Russia-Ukraine war in a day when he makes a comeback to the White House. Although he hasn't provided any specifics about the plans, the war has been going on for more than 2.5 years now, and there seems to be no end in sight. The conflict-ridden Middle East will be one of the key areas for the incoming Trump administration. Trump has promised to bring peace to the region, but then again, he hasn't given any details on how he plans to stop the two big conflicts in the region which involve Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah. These conflicts have killed more than 45,000 people, most of them women and children in Gaza. There is no ceasefire deal in sight at the moment, and how Trump steers the Gaza and Lebanon ceasefire deals remains to be seen. Now to China. How Trump manages relations with China is one of the most talked about topics when it comes to US's foreign policy. Experts suggest that Trump is likely to increase import tariffs on China, which would most likely invite countermeasures from China. On the other hand, there is also a likelihood that Trump could be open to pragmatic deals with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
All right, let's also get in an important voice from London to talk more about what this means in terms of the impact Donald Trump's policies will have on the Middle East. So let me first start by asking you in terms of the important wars that are going on. There are two conflicts, and there's a sense or expectation at least that Donald Trump, who's been saying that he's going to end the war in 24 hours, will come good on his election rhetoric. So what do you think he'll do when it comes to Russia, Ukraine?
So I believe during the campaign, when he said 24 hours, he was referring to Russia, Ukraine. Now, I think most people know that that's probably not going to happen within 24 hours. Of course, he needs to make contact with both of those leaders. What he promotes is that he knows Putin and he knows Zelensky, and therefore he's able to go ahead and do a deal because he makes deals. Exactly how that's going to come about, of course, nobody really knows. And to tell you the truth, I don't think Donald Trump knows exactly. But you mentioned the Middle East. I can actually tell you right now, as I'm waiting and watching this coverage and waiting for you to come to me, that actually in the last 10 minutes, a huge barrage of rockets from Hezbollah in Lebanon have actually come back into Israel, in northern Israel and across Haifa as well. There's been about 100 to 150. This is a daily digest of rockets coming in every single day from Lebanon and has been for the last 13 months. So what Donald Trump has said, and as you probably know, the current prime minister in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has spoken several times to Trump in the last week. He met with him as well when he was in America a few weeks ago. And of course, he had a 15-minute conversation with him after he actually, Donald Trump, won that amazing victory, which I think a lot of people didn't think that all of those 7 swing states would actually go to Donald Trump. And from what I understand, and somebody who is in the Middle East all the time, and also sometimes in the United States, and you've just caught me in London at this point, what I understand is that Donald Trump is somebody who does not want wars. So if there's wars which are currently going on right now, he wants the Israelis to finish these wars off. Now, to finish them off means that you actually finish them off without them starting up again in 6 months' time or a year's time. So that means that Hezbollah and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad have to lose their military capability from actually firing again at
I want to
Israel
ask
in
you,
6 months' time
right,
or
I
9
also
months'
want to
time.
ask you about the China aspect. I know you're based out of London. You feel strongly about the war that's going on in Russia, Ukraine. But I also want to ask you about the key challenge that the world is facing, which is China. Remember, Donald Trump walks into an administration remembering that 4 years back, China did not come good on its commitment of buying $200 billion as part of the trade deal. How important will that be when he decides his China policy?
Well, actually, Gaurie, I feel strong about all foreign policy, actually, including the Middle East, not just Russia and Ukraine as well, and of course in the South Pacific as well, because I still think that we are likely to hear from North Korea in the coming months, because that's exactly what happened when Donald Trump came into power in 2016. With regard to China and the economic system between China and the United States, Donald Trump won for two reasons, because he kept promoting two specific policies. Number one was immigration, which your report mentioned earlier on. And number two is jobs for America, of course, to keep the prices of gasoline down, keep the prices of groceries down, which a lot of Americans have felt that they can't afford to live anymore, and therefore they're taking a chance with Donald Trump. So therefore, Donald Trump is going to do exactly what he did in 2016. A lot of the factories have closed down in the United States. Therefore, he wants to get them working again. Now, from the American business point of view, he says it's not worth me starting up those factories again and making American goods when it's so much cheaper for foreign goods to come into this country, and Americans are buying those foreign goods. And Donald Trump is saying America first. We're going to focus on American goods, American jobs, American people, and any goods coming in from outside. If we need to do it, then we're going to put tariffs on that. And of course, he's focusing on China. But what he will do is he will get together with the Chinese leader, and they will talk, and they will see what deal that they can come up with. Remember, he's a businessman.
Right. Indeed, he is a businessman. Some of his policies could be transactional. So some would say it could also be predictable, but who knows? Thanks so much for speaking to me on this special show. Let's also now take a look at what really happened as far as the Kamala camp is concerned. First, listen in to what she said when she conceded her defeat to Donald Trump, and then, of course, we talk more about what really happened in her campaign.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people.
Now, if you remember, nearly a month ago, Kamala Harris actually appeared on ABC in what was expected to be a friendly interview aimed at pitching herself to Americans who wanted to know more about her. But the sit-down, as you know, was quickly overshadowed by her response to a question on what she would have done differently from incumbent President Joe Biden. She actually said, "Not a thing comes to mind." Kamala Harris's answer, which became a Republican attack ad on loop, many argue underscored the political headwinds that her Jumpstart campaign failed to overcome in a decisive loss to Donald Trump. Publicly, she has conceded the race, telling supporters, do not despair, but soul-searching over where she went wrong and what else she could have done will likely take longer as Democrats begin finger-pointing and raising questions about the future of the party. But initial reactions indicate that Kamala Harris's loss in this election wasn't just about policy differences or Trump's strength as an opponent. It's about a deeper story of identity, strategy, and timing. So many analysts are actually arguing that first, Harris never fully embraced the historic nature of her candidacy. Many pollsters and analysts I've been speaking to believe that she downplayed her race and gender, not leaning into the powerful symbolism of being the first black woman with a shot at this presidency. And in trying to avoid making identity a central theme, she missed the chance to turn it into a rallying cry for change. Next, Harris ran a campaign that promised little would change, just that the person in charge would look different. In contrast, political watchers highlight that Trump's team offered a story about America's future that played on fears and desires for a return to traditional values. So Kamala Harris's message, though hopeful, felt like a promise of stasis, a future with small adjustments, but no real transformation. Then there's the challenge of what it means to navigate identity politics. Kamala Harris tried to play it safe, appealing to white voters by focusing on issues like national security and law and order. But in doing so, she actually ended up alienating key parts of a base many analysts highlight, while not fully securing enough of the voters she needed from the other side. So in a nutshell, it's a balancing act that did not quite land for Kamala Harris. Her campaign also struggled with the weight of expectations. Like many women in leadership roles, she was thrust into the spotlight at a time of crisis, and you can't deny that. The Democratic Party was desperate for a candidate who could challenge Donald Trump, but Harris's candidacy for many in the United States often felt more like a last-ditch effort than a movement of, let's say, hope and change. And then there's the role of race and gender in shaping her narrative. Now, despite being a black woman, Harris couldn't fully embrace the power of that identity without risking alienating certain voters. But the reality, is identity has always been central to American politics. It's just that for many, it's only seen as a problem when it belongs to someone who's not white or not male. But in the end, Kamala Harris's loss wasn't just about who she was or what she stood for. It's about how she told her story and the ways in which she chose not to.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of US Election Watch. Thanks so much for watching.